She was singing to no one. That's the thing I keep coming back to even now. Not performing, not hoping someone would hear her, just singing. To the rain, to the empty street, to whatever she needed to get out of her chest that night. And her voice cut through everything. The hiss of the water on the pavement, the distant hum of the HVAC unit on the roof, the whole ordinary noise of a Tuesday night in Asheville. She cut through all of it like something that had been waiting a long time to be heard. I stood at the side door of the Arts Center and listened for almost a full minute before I even moved. Then I walked over. And I said something I couldn't take back, something I hadn't planned, something I didn't know I was going to say until the words were already out of my mouth. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Caleb Marsh. I'm 31 years old, and I work the night shift at the Hazel Ridge Community Arts Center, a big converted textile mill on the south end of Asheville, North Carolina. It's a real place. Drama studios, pottery rooms, a recital hall, an open gallery that changes every 6 weeks. During the day, it buzzes. By 9:30 at night, after the last class lets out and the instructors have all gone home, it's mine. I run a mop, empty trash cans, restock the supply closets, check the doors, and make sure whoever left paint on the pottery studio floor gets a note taped to their locker. It doesn't take brains, but it takes attention, and I've always been good at paying attention to things. I've been doing it for 3 years. Before that, I was in a different kind of life. I was engaged. Her name was Bridget, and we'd been together since I was 26. She was a dental hygienist, smart and practical, and she told me, with the kind of gentleness that cuts deeper than cruelty, that she needed someone with more ambition. Not more kindness, not more honesty, more ambition. I remember standing in our kitchen and thinking, well, then I'm just not going to be enough. Not for that. Not for anyone. I moved into a studio apartment 2 blocks from the Arts Center the following month. I applied for the night shift job because the hours suited a man who wasn't sleeping anyway. The quiet suited him, too. That was 2 years ago. I'm not bitter. I want to say that clearly. I like my life. I like the empty hallways and the smell of linseed oil and the sound the mop head makes on old hardwood. I like being the person who keeps something beautiful running in the dark when no one's watching. I just stopped expecting anyone to look at me twice, until that Tuesday night in November when I heard her singing in the rain. It was almost 10 o'clock when I went out the side door to wheel in the recycling bins. It had been raining steadily since early afternoon, a cold, gray Appalachian rain that doesn't make a drama of itself, just settles in and stays. The street was mostly empty. One car passing every few minutes, the splash of its tires, then quiet again. She was standing under the narrow overhang of the old hardware store across the alley. Not quite sheltered, the overhang was too shallow to do much good, and the rain kept reaching her, but she was standing there anyway, back against the brick wall, face tipped slightly up, singing something slow. I don't know the song. I'm not sure it was a real song. It sounded like something she was making up as she went. Melody first, the words following wherever the melody led. Her voice was low and a little rough around the edges, the way voices get when someone has been crying recently and doesn't realize the sound of it is still there. She had one small bag at her feet, not a suitcase, just a canvas tote with the strap worn through in one spot. She was wearing a paint-stained denim jacket over a gray sweater. Her dark hair was wet. She wasn't performing. She was surviving. I stood at the door for a while, holding the recycling lid. I tried to decide what a reasonable person does in this situation. Walk back inside, mind his own business, let the moment pass. That's what a reasonable person does. I've been a reasonable person for 31 years, and I've gotten very good at letting moments pass. But she kept singing. I set the lid down. I crossed the alley. When I was close enough that she could hear me, I stopped. She opened her eyes. She hadn't known I was there. For a second, her whole body went tight, the way a person does when they're startled in the dark, and I took half a step back and held up one hand. I'm sorry, I said. I work across the street. I just, I heard you. She looked at me. Her eyes were dark brown, sharp, and very tired. I wasn't sure what to say after that. Then I said the only thing that felt true. Can I walk you home? She stared at me for a long moment. The rain came in sideways under the overhang and caught her shoulder. Then she said, quietly, I don't have one right now. I want to tell you that I handled that perfectly. I didn't. I stood there for a second too long while the sentence rearranged itself in my head. You don't have, I started. My landlord sold the building, she said, and her voice was very flat, the way people speak when they've said something so many times in their own head that it's lost all of its weight. I had 30 days. It ran out today. My car's at my brother's place, but he lives in Boone and I don't have enough gas to get there tonight. And it felt... She stopped. Looked at the wet street. I wasn't ready to call him yet. I looked at the canvas tote at her feet. How long have you been out here? Since 7. 3 hours. She'd been standing in the rain for 3 hours. I'm Caleb, I said. She hesitated. Then, Elise. Elise, I said it once, the way you do when you want to make sure you've got it right. I've got another hour on my shift. There's a break room inside. Dry, hot coffee if you want it. She looked at the art center door across the alley. Then back at me. You don't know me, she said. I know you've been standing in the rain since 7, I said. Come inside. She picked up the tote bag. She crossed the alley without saying anything else. Her name was Elise Doran. She was 28. She'd been living in Asheville for 4 years, working as a freelance illustrator, book covers, small press, some editorial work. She'd had a 1-bedroom apartment in a building on Lexington that her landlord had apparently been planning to sell for 8 months without telling any of the tenants. The eviction notice arrived and she had 30 days and a car that needed an alternator and a client who owed her money that wasn't coming. She told me this in pieces over the next hour, sitting at the small table in the break room with both hands around a mug of coffee. Not because she wanted to tell me. Because I asked careful questions, and she was too tired to be guarded. I learned this about her in the first conversation. She hated asking for help. Not the way people say that about themselves to seem independent. She hated it the way you hate something that costs you something real, something deep, some piece of how she'd always seen herself. My brother keeps saying I should have called him immediately, she said. He's right. I know he's right. I just couldn't. Why not? She turned the mug slowly. Because he'd worry. And then he'd help. And then I'd owe him the worry. On top of everything else. I thought about Bridget saying the word ambition. About how some people see a quiet life as a failure, and some people see it as the only honest kind. About how you could spend years being the wrong kind of person for someone and not know it until the kitchen conversation. You don't owe people their worry, I said. That's theirs. Elise looked at me. Something shifted in her face, not softening exactly, more like recalibrating. You're a custodian, she said. Not as an insult, more as something she was working out. At an art center. Night shift. Why? I like the hours. I like quiet buildings. I paused. I went through something a couple of years ago that made me want a simpler life. I found one. She didn't ask what the something was. I noticed that she didn't ask. My sketchbook's in the bag, she said after a while. I haven't opened it in 6 weeks. I didn't say anything. I just listened. I used to draw every day. Even on bad days. Then the lease thing happened, and the client thing, and my car, and she shook her head. I can't make anything. I sit down and there's nothing there. The singing, I said. She looked at me quickly. That's why you were singing, I said. When you can't make the thing you're supposed to make, you make something else instead. She was quiet for a long moment. The break room was very still. Outside, I could hear the rain still going. Nobody's ever said that to me before, she said. It's what it looked like. She looked down at her mug. There was something in the set of her shoulders, something that had been braced against the evening, that came down a degree or two. She stayed until my shift ended. I called the Maple Street Inn when it was time to close up. It was the only place I could think of that wasn't a chain and wasn't expensive. I paid for 2 nights over the phone while Elise was in the bathroom, and I told her the reservation was already set up and covered for the week. Which wasn't true, but I'd figure that part out. She figured it out anyway. Standing outside while I locked the side door, she turned to me with her arms crossed. "You paid for it. The Art Center has a small emergency fund for..." "Caleb," I stopped. "Thank you," she said, and her voice did something complicated on the word. "But I'm going to pay you back. You don't have to." "I know I don't have to," she said. "That's not why I'm doing it." The rain had lightened to almost nothing. The alley smelled like wet pavement and the pine trees that lined the far end of the lot. I looked at her standing there in the paint-stained jacket with the worn tote over her shoulder, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not attraction. Not yet. Something quieter than that. Recognition. She called her brother that night. Over the next few days, Elise got her car back and found a temporary sublet through a friend of a friend. A small furnished room on the 3rd floor of a Victorian house on Marymount Avenue. Nothing fancy, but it had a window that faced the mountains and a little desk where she could work. She texted me on the 3rd day. I opened the sketchbook. I didn't know what to say to that. I typed, and nothing, she wrote. But I opened it. First time in 6 weeks. I put the phone down and found that I was smiling at the break room wall. She came by the Arts Center the following Tuesday. Not because she needed something, she just stopped by. She brought coffee from the place on Broadway that does it the old-fashioned way, in paper cups that go soft at the bottom if you hold them too long. She sat at the break room table and showed me the first pages of the sketchbook. Rough sketches, half-finished things. A woman standing under an overhang in the rain, seen from across a street. A mop bucket. A window. "You've been drawing the Art Center," I said. "I've been drawing Tuesday nights," she said. I looked at the sketch of the woman in the rain, at the way Elise had drawn her own back, the curve of her shoulders, the way her face was tilted up toward something. It was done in pencil with a few small touches of blue, and it was the saddest and most alive thing I'd ever seen. "This is really good," I said. She shrugged. She was looking at the sketch herself now, and I could see she wasn't sure whether to believe me. "It's honest," I said. "That's the same thing." She closed the sketchbook. She looked at me across the break room table. "Caleb." "Yeah. When you walked over that night. In the rain." She paused. "Were you afraid I'd tell you to get lost?" "Yes," I said. "Why did you do it anyway?" I thought about it. The honest answer was the only one that came. "Because you were singing like no one was going to hear you," I said. "And I thought someone should." She didn't answer right away. She looked down at the sketchbook, then out the narrow window at the parking lot. "I'm glad you did," she said finally. We sat there a little longer, the coffee going cold between us, the quiet building around us doing its nighttime thing. And I noticed that the quiet had changed. 2 years of filling it with work and small routines, and now it didn't need filling. It felt like somewhere we were both already living. November moved into December. The rain came and went. The Arts Center filled up with holiday recitals and end-of-year pottery classes, and my nights got busier, and I got to see Elise less. But she texted, and I texted back, and twice she came by during a slow evening, and we walked down to the diner 2 blocks away and ate soup, and talked about things that didn't have to go anywhere. She told me about her family. Her parents had retired to Hilton Head. Her brother Marcus was 5 years older, a contractor in Boone, practical, careful, the kind of man who planned everything 3 steps ahead. He'd looked out for her since they were kids. When she was struggling, he was the first person anyone expected her to call. "He still doesn't know I was standing in the rain," she said. "You're going to have to tell him eventually." "I know." She wrapped both hands around her soup bowl. "He'll be upset, not at me. He'll be upset that he didn't know, that he couldn't help sooner." That's not the same as being upset at you. I know. She looked at me. It still feels the same. I understood that. I thought about Bridget and the kitchen, and how sometimes people who love you can still make you feel like you took up the wrong space. He'll be okay, I said. Sounds like he loves you. He does. She was quiet for a moment. He'll want to meet you. Something moved in my chest. Not alarm. Something warmer than alarm. Okay, I said. She looked at me steadily. You say that very easily. I mean it very easily. She smiled. It wasn't a quick smile, it was a slow one, the kind that starts somewhere in the eyes before it gets to the mouth. I'd been keeping track of her smiles without meaning to. I had counted 4 of them so far. This was the best one. She finished the illustration in the second week of December. I didn't know she'd been working on it until she showed up at the art center on a Friday night with an envelope in her hand. I was in the gallery, moving chairs from a lecture that had ended an hour before. She stood in the doorway and watched me for a second, then held up the envelope. For you, she said. I set down the chair. I took the envelope. Inside was a single piece of heavy illustration paper, folded once. I opened it. It was us. The alley, the rain, the overhang. She'd drawn the view from above. A quiet bird's eye of 2 people in an alley, one standing under a narrow strip of shelter, one crossing toward her through the rain. The colors were muted, blue and gray and the faint yellow of the art center's side door light. In the foreground, at the edge of the image, you could see the corner of the canvas tote bag at the first figure's feet. I stood there looking at it for a long time. This is the first finished piece I've done in 3 months, she said. Her voice was very quiet. I wanted you to have it. I looked up. Elise, you said someone should hear me, she said. I wanted you to know I heard that. There were things I wanted to say. I couldn't get to any of them. I folded the paper carefully along its crease and put it back in the envelope. Thank you, I said. I'm going to keep this. She nodded. She was watching my face with an expression I was starting to recognize, open in a way that cost her something, like she'd decided to leave a door unlatched and was waiting to see what I did about it. I did the wrong thing. Or the slow thing. I put the envelope in my jacket pocket and went back to moving chairs. Because I was afraid of what came next, and I'd been afraid for 2 years, and old habits take time to break. She left an hour later with a quiet goodnight. I carried the picture home and put it on the kitchen table and looked at it for a long time. Marcus Doran called me on a Tuesday. I didn't know he had my number. I found out later that Elise had given it to him 3 weeks earlier without mentioning it to me. I was in the middle of restocking the supply closet when his name came up on my phone, a contact I didn't recognize, identified as Marcus Elise's brother in a way that could only have come from her. Caleb Marsh? His voice was level, careful, the voice of someone taking measurements. That's me. I'm Marcus Doran. My sisters told me about you. She mentioned you too, I said. Good things. A pause. I want to meet you. He said it the way people say things when they're trying to sound neutral but they've already made up their mind. I'd heard that register before. It meant, I need to decide about you. And I've already started deciding. Sure, I said. When works for you? He drove down from Boone the following Saturday. We met at the diner because Elise said that was neutral territory, and because the soup was good and that counted for something. She came too, but she sat at the far end of the booth and let Marcus and me talk, which told me she understood exactly what kind of conversation this was going to be. Marcus was broad-shouldered, with the same dark eyes as his sister, and the same tendency to go very still when he was thinking hard. He ordered black coffee and didn't touch it for the first 10 minutes. How old are you? He asked. 31. How long have you worked at the art center? 3 years. Before that, different jobs. I was engaged a few years back. That ended. I simplified my life. He looked at me. Elise was studying her soup. She was standing in that alley for 3 hours, he said. In November. In the rain. Yes, and she didn't call me. No. The silence sat. He picked up the coffee, held it, put it down. She told you before she told me, he said. She told you when she was ready, I said carefully. That's not the same thing. His jaw tightened. She's my sister. I know. She's been on her own too long, taking on too much, not asking anyone for anything. That's been the pattern her whole life. I've watched it. He paused. And now she's spending her evenings at an arts center with a night shift custodian she met in an alley. I didn't defend myself. I just waited. What do you want from her? He asked. It was the most direct question I'd been asked in years. I answered it directly. I want her to keep opening that sketchbook, I said. I want her to stop treating help like a debt. And I want to keep having soup with her at diners. I looked at him. Whether you're okay with that or not, I'll keep doing the first two. The third one's up to her. Marcus looked at me for a long time. Elise was watching us both from the other end of the booth, her spoon in her hand, very still. She gave you a drawing, Marcus said finally. It wasn't a question. Yes, she hasn't finished a piece in months. I know. She told me. He picked up the coffee and drank some. Looked out the window at the street. You know she doesn't make it easy, he said. The edge in his voice had shifted into something less certain, something that sounded almost like an apology, not to me, but to the situation. She doesn't need to make it easy, I said. She just needs to let me be there. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at his sister. You like him, he said. It wasn't a question either. Elise met his eyes. Yes, she said. Simple as that. Marcus exhaled through his nose. Something in his posture changed, not relaxing exactly, but releasing, like a fist unclenching. He looked at me with a different expression. She doesn't eat enough when she's working, he said. I've noticed. She leaves the gas tank too close to empty. It's a habit. I'll mention it. He almost smiled. It was a small, reluctant thing. See that you do. He didn't drive back to Boone that afternoon. He stayed, and we walked through the art center because Elise wanted to show him something in the gallery, a print show she'd been helping with informally, doing some layout work for the signage. Marcus walked the gallery with his hands in his pockets, looking at everything carefully, the way a man does when he's been a contractor for 10 years and can't stop reading rooms. At the back of the gallery near the window, he stopped in front of a small framed print. This hers? He asked. Elise nodded. It was the alley illustration. She'd had it printed on heavy stock and matted in a gray frame. It was small, maybe 8 by 10, and it hung slightly below eye level like it wasn't trying to demand attention. Marcus stood in front of it for a long time. Elle, he said. This is really good. She didn't say anything, but I saw her breathe. Marcus turned and looked at me across the gallery. The afternoon light came through the windows in long, pale strips. Something passed across his face. Not warmth exactly, not yet, but the beginning of it. The recognition of something he couldn't argue with. He drove back to Boone at 5. Before he got in his truck, he put out his hand. I shook it. Take care of her, he said. Then, after a pause, she'll fight you on it. I know. That doesn't mean stop. He got in the truck and left. Christmas came and went. I worked both days of the holiday weekend because the center had a skeleton crew, and I liked the building when it was empty and full of tinsel. Elise spent Christmas with her family in Hilton Head, her parents, Marcus and his wife, the whole routine. She texted on Christmas afternoon. My mother asked if you're real. I typed back. What did you say? I said, regrettably, yes. I laughed out loud in the empty break room. She came back to Asheville on the 27th. The sublet had been extended through March, which meant she had time and a desk and a window facing the mountains. She had 4 new commissions in January, the kind of editorial work she'd been trying to get for years, book covers, 2 of them, from a small press in Chapel Hill. I took her to dinner the night she told me, not the diner. A real restaurant. The kind with candles and a menu that changes. She wore a blue dress and left her hair down. I wore the only jacket I owned that didn't smell like linseed oil. Halfway through dinner, she put her fork down and looked at me. Caleb. Yeah, You're nervous, she said. You've been nervous for 6 weeks. I know. About what? I looked at my plate, at the fork, at the candle between us, at her. I was going to ask you something, I said, and every time I get close to asking it, I think about Bridget and the word ambition, and I talk myself out of it. Elise was very still. What word do I use? She asked quietly. I looked up. What do you see when you look at me? She said. Not Bridget. Not the man who got left. What do you see? I thought about it. The honest answer. Someone who sings when she can't make anything else, I said. Someone who hates asking for help because she keeps confusing it with losing something. I paused. Someone who gave me a drawing instead of just a thank you. Because that's how she says things. Her eyes were bright in the candlelight. Caleb, she said. Yeah, ask the thing. I set my fork down. I'd like to be with you, I said. I don't mean occasionally at diners. I mean all of it. The hard creative weeks and the sketchbook and the near-empty gas tank and the brother who's going to keep checking on me for the next 5 years. I looked at her. I'd like to be the person you call at 7 when the rain's too cold. She looked at me for a long time. I called my brother, she said, that night. From the inn. I told him about you before I told anyone else. I know. That's not nothing, she said. That's actually everything. For me. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Yes, she said. All of it. January was cold and clear. We walked a lot, the River Arts District, the trails above town, the Saturday market even in the cold. She started leaving her sketchbook at the art center some evenings, working at the break room table while I did my rounds, and I would check in on her between tasks, and sometimes she'd show me what she was doing, and sometimes she wouldn't, and both were fine. Marcus came down twice. The second time, he brought his wife Dana, who was a pediatric nurse and who had apparently been hearing about me for months and decided to form her own opinion. She sat across from me at a long Sunday dinner and asked practical questions about my work history and my family, and what I thought the difference was between a person being private and a person being closed. I said I thought you could be private and open at the same time if you trusted the room you were in. Dana looked at Elise. Elise looked at her plate. He's good, Dana told Marcus that evening in the kitchen. Not quietly enough. I know, Marcus said. It was the first time I heard him say those words about me. I was standing in the doorway with a dish towel and I didn't let on that I'd heard. The hard part came in February. Elise's client, the one who had owed her money since November, sent a revised contract. The new terms cut her rate by 30% and removed the kill fee clause. He'd done the same thing to 2 other illustrators she knew. It was the kind of move that happens when someone decides your need is bigger than their integrity. She called me at midnight. I was home, already awake, which I didn't tell her. I signed the first contract in good faith, she said. Her voice was flat in that way I'd learned to read. Not flat because she didn't feel things. Flat because she was feeling too much of them. I know. He's counting on the fact that I need the work. Do you need the work? She was quiet for a moment. Not as much as I used to, she said. The book covers are real. The money's coming in. But it's not solid yet. And he knows that. And she stopped. What? He's doing what everybody does, she said. He's deciding that I'm the kind of person who'll take less because I'm grateful for anything. I didn't say the easy thing. I said the true thing. You're not that person, I said. You haven't been that person for a while. Caleb, don't sign it. She was quiet. You have the book covers, I said. You have your name on good work now. You don't need him to undervalue you. What if more work doesn't come? More work will come. It's coming already. I paused. Elise, you opened the sketchbook. That was the whole thing. Everything since then has been you. She didn't answer for a long moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end. I'm scared, she said. I know. Stay on the phone? Yeah, I said. I'm here. She didn't sign the contract. She sent a polite, final reply. The client didn't respond. A week later, a third book cover commission arrived from a publisher in New York. Marcus found out about the client situation in March. The way Marcus found out about things. Through Elise. Eventually, when she was ready. He drove down and took us both to lunch and listened, and when she was finished, he sat for a moment and then said, "I want to say I would have handled it differently." "You would have," Elise said. "But you didn't need me to handle it." "No." He looked at me. I looked at him. "She called you," he said. "At midnight," I said. "And you told her not to sign it." "Yes." Marcus turned his coffee cup slowly. "I've been telling her for years not to undersell herself," he said. "She never listened to me." Elise looked at the window. "Because I'm your brother," he said. "And you don't want to need your brother's advice." She didn't deny it. Marcus leaned back. There was something working through his face. Something he was making peace with in real time. I'd watched him do this before, at the diner, in the gallery. He was the kind of man who didn't change his mind easily, but changed it honestly when the evidence required it. "You're good for her," he said to me. Just like that. Level, direct. "She's good for herself," I said. "I just try to stay out of the way." He almost smiled. It was becoming less reluctant each time. "Don't undersell that," he said. Spring came. The Art Center put up a new show in the gallery, mixed media, a dozen local artists. Elise had 2 pieces in it. The alley illustration, now in a slightly larger print, and a new one. A view from the break room window, looking out at the parking lot in rain, with 2 figures barely visible, reflected in the glass. She didn't tell me the second one was going to be in the show until opening night. I walked into the gallery in my good jacket and saw it hanging on the east wall, and stood there for a moment without speaking. She came up beside me. "The light in that window is real," she said. "I know," I said. "I mop that floor 3 times a week." She laughed. Then she slipped her hand into mine, right there in the gallery, in front of the other patrons and the instructor who kept leaving paint on the pottery floor, and the director who had never once acknowledged that I existed. I held her hand. "Thank you for crossing the alley," she said. "You were singing," I said. "I do that. I know." I looked at the painting, at the 2 figures in the glass. "I hope you keep doing it." She leaned her head against my shoulder. It's September now. Elise moved out of the sublet in June. She has a proper apartment, 2 bedrooms because she wanted a real studio, a room with north-facing light and a big table for spreading out. I helped her move boxes. Marcus and Dana came down and brought a dining table. It took 4 of us in a rented van and 3 trips up 2 flights of stairs. At the end of the day, after everyone had gone, Elise and I sat on the floor of the empty studio because the desk chair hadn't been assembled yet. She had paint on her hands already. The north light was going gold in the late afternoon. She opened the sketchbook on the floor between us and showed me what she'd been working on for the new commission. 7 illustrations, all finished, all extraordinary. I looked at each one carefully. "These are the best things you've made," I said. She looked at them too. "I think so," she said. Then, "I'm not scared of saying that anymore." We sat there until the light was gone. I'm still on the night shift. I still run the mop and check the doors and leave notes for whoever keeps leaving paint on the pottery studio floor. The building still hums at night with the particular silence of a place that has spent the day full of people and is now breathing out. I still like it. I think I always will. But I don't come home to quiet the same way I used to. Some evenings Elise brings coffee to the center and works at the break room table while I do my rounds. Some mornings I drive to her apartment on my way home and she's already up, already drawing, already 2 cups into the day. Saturday nights we walk the River Arts District and she points out things she's looking at and I tell her what I see, and we're usually looking at different things and both of us are right. Last week she showed me a new sketch. Rough pencil, quick lines, a man crossing an alley in the rain. "I keep coming back to this," she said. "I know." That night, she stopped. Then started again. I'd been out there 3 hours, and I had told myself, nobody's going to walk over. Nobody does that. You don't do that for strangers. I almost didn't. She looked at me. What made you? I thought about it. The true answer. You were singing like no one would ever hear you, I said. And I thought, someone should walk over. Someone should ask. She was quiet for a moment. Then she held out the sketchbook. Here, she said. This one's yours too. I took it. I looked at the figure crossing the alley, the careful lines of a man who had almost talked himself out of it, crossing through rain towards something he couldn't name yet. I folded it along its crease and put it in my jacket pocket, next to the envelope I always carried, next to the first drawing she ever gave me. Some nights I think about the person I was 2 years ago, the man who stood in a kitchen and heard the word ambition and decided he was the wrong shape for the world. He wasn't wrong, exactly. He was just looking at the wrong map. Some people want ambition. Some people want someone who crosses rainy alleys at 10 o'clock at night because a voice cuts through everything and they can't make themselves walk away. It turned out I was built for the second kind of story. I just needed to find the person who was singing it. The alley still looks the same at night. The overhang across from the side door still doesn't keep the rain out properly. Sometimes, on wet evenings, when I go out to bring in the recycling bins, I look over at that narrow strip of shelter and remember standing at the door and listening and making a choice. I'm glad I crossed. She was worth every wet step.